America Next is a conservative public policy organization and is launching an ad campaign called Don't Bail Out Politicians. Take a look.
Nancy Pelosi has used this crisis to fund liberal pet projects. Harvard, the Kennedy Center, money that should go to people suffering. Now she wants billions to bail out incompetent Democrat politicians in New York and California who have for years mismanaged with reckless and wasteful spending. Conservatives like Rick Scott are fighting back.
This is just a bailout of poorly managed states.
Hard-working American taxpayers should not be on the hook.
Tell Congress, help people, not politicians.
Here to talk about this further is the organization's honorary chairman, former Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Stephanie. Thank you for having me. It's great to be on your show this morning.
Thank you. You echo many GOP lawmakers' sentiments criticizing House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who's hoping to spend another $915 billion to bail out politicians in states that made reckless and terrible budget decisions. What sort of examples can you give us for our viewers who may not be familiar with the situation?
Well, Stephanie, unfortunately, there are too many of these examples. For example, in California, they want to give millions of dollars to illegal immigrants. In Illinois, even way back in April, the Senate president asked for $10 billion to bail out their failed pension plans. And these were plans that had problems even before the coronavirus, even before we'd even heard of the coronavirus. It's not just blue states, unfortunately. In Alabama, you had politicians there that wanted to spend $200 million of federal relief funds to build a new state house. Now, the good news is the governor put a stop to that. Here's the problem. I guess we shouldn't be surprised that politicians are using this as an opportunity to waste our taxpayer dollars. Nancy Pelosi authored an 1,800-page bill filled with pork, filled with unnecessary spending, yet couldn't find time for one sentence, $1 to help Americans get back to work. You look at some of her previous bills, we mentioned the Harvard University funding, the Kennedy Center funding, but in this bill, there are cannabis provisions. In previous bills, she tried to force in there the Green New Deal mandates. She tried to force in there diversity mandates for corporate boards, none of which has anything to do with the coronavirus. So unfortunately, you may remember Rahm Emanuel under President Obama said, don't let a crisis go to waste. This time around, Vice President Biden has said something similar. He said, let's use this opportunity to fundamentally transform America. Instead of actually helping American families, you've got liberal Democratic politicians pursuing their own agendas. We don't need to waste more taxpayer dollars to bail out these failing blue states.
Exactly. Your sentiment, as I said, echoes a lot of others, saying that she's trying to fund pet projects. Now, you say if the federal government takes this disastrous step, it will kill the incentive for state governments to act responsibly and further burden hardworking American taxpayers. You were the governor of Louisiana from 2008 to 2016. Some of that time was during the financial crisis. What would your approach be to reopen the economy during this pandemic?
Stephanie, that's a great question. Look, our elected leaders are there to make the tough decisions. Right now, American families are struggling. Over 35 million Americans have lost their jobs. You've got families struggling to pay their rent, struggling to pay their mortgages. You've got American families in unprecedented numbers now going to get food from food banks and local churches and charities. And instead of the politicians doing their jobs, they're not willing to cut waste. They're not willing to look for efficiencies. Instead, they're trying to bail out politicians instead of helping people. Here's something that makes me so proud as an American. Here in America, you've got people protesting, saying, we want to go back to work. Now think about that. They're struggling, that they're trying to pay their bills, and they're not protesting saying, give us more money. Instead, they're saying, let us go back to work. And we need politicians that will prioritize the needs of their constituents, of working families, rather than government. We need them to get out of the way and help people go back to work. Look, the American people want to go back to work. They want to provide for their families instead of seeking bailouts. These blue state politicians, these blue state governors, these blue city mayors need to reopen their economies. We can do it in a safe way, but instead of trying to help American families get jobs, they want to create more government dependence. They want to spend money we don't have. Let's be honest, whenever the government spends money, that is money it's taking from other taxpayers. So I think the most fundamental thing our politicians need to do right now is to actually help American workers, American families, not bail out politicians.
How do we go about reopening the economy while keeping residents safe from the coronavirus to prevent another potential spike in cases?
Stephanie, this is a great question. It really comes down to a fundamental point. I trust the American people. I think the American people are smarter than elitists give us credit for. And the reality is the American people know that life has risk. You know, we'd all love it maybe if you could have life without risk, but that's not reality. And American people are capable of doing two things simultaneously. They're capable of going back to work, and they're capable of being safe. I think that I trust the American people more than these unelected bureaucrats to evaluate these risks for themselves and to make informed decisions about how to mitigate those risks. And so, for example, you know, here in Louisiana, one of my boys has started playing baseball again outside, and they're being safe about it. But I'm glad that they're able to get outside, get some exercise, play with their teammates. But that's every American family, every American worker can make those decisions, can consider the risks and do so safely. It's not an either or. What we cannot afford to do is to destroy our economy. We had the country's strongest economy before coronavirus. We need a strong economy after this virus is done, and we can have that. But this really comes down to a fundamental philosophical choice. I trust the American people. We don't need the elites trying to micromanage our lives. And I think if we do that, the American people can get back to work and they can do so safely. And that's important. We need to beat this virus. We need to develop a vaccine. And I believe in American innovation. And I think we'll do that. But we also need to preserve our economy. The American dream is not to be dependent on government. It's to have a good paying job so we can provide for our families.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.